Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I am your host Khalid. But today is the 24th of April 2024 and these are the stories that we will be highlighting during the course of the show. We'll begin with the human rights violations that have been going on in India and how with the elections that have now begun in India and will continue till the 1st of June, there is more and more evidence that the minorities in India are being sidelined deliberately in order to appease the Hindu majority in India, and that is being done by the BJP, whether it be by curtailing the powers of the opposition and suppressing them one way or the other, whether it be by sidelining the Muslims in different mechanisms and machinations that have been going on since quite some time. And despite the fact that Narendra Modi and his government have been highlighting the fact that India is the biggest and the shining democracy of the region and a pluralistic country, the facts and figures state otherwise. Press freedom is also being curtailed, so is the freedom to express your point of view as far as the realities of what are going on in India is also concerned. This and more will be highlighted in our first segment. Our second story concerns day 201 of the Palestine-Israel conflict that has been now going on. Fears are also rising that tens of thousands of civilians in northern Gaza's Beit Lahia are under stress because of the Israeli army's incursion in the city with extreme force. And of course, they have told the Palestinians to immediately flee the region whenever they will enter the region with force. At least 34,262 Palestinians have been killed since the 7th of October last year and more than 77,200 wounded. And of course, the wounded and the number of wounded, number of those who have been killed continues in different parts of Palestine as well. This said, there is also more and more evidence that the ground invasion in Rafah is becoming a reality, a sad reality, but a reality nevertheless. More and more countries also are now supporting UNRWA, with Germany adding to the list of countries that are now going to resume their funding to UNRWA, despite the US and Israel still refusing to do so, despite the fact that, as per a report by a former French minister, there is no proof whatsoever of UNRWA's involvement in the 7th of October incident. This and more are going to be discussed in our second story. Then we are going to talk about the global treaty to reduce plastic pollution. Negotiators from 175 nations have begun talks since yesterday on a proposed global treaty to reduce plastic pollution, which is found everywhere, and we all know that, from mountain tops to ocean depths, in human blood and in breast milk as well, yes, of all places. And of course, there is a need to work on it in order to make the world a safe place to live in and our future generations to also be more healthy. Will that happen is another question altogether. Nevertheless, this treaty is being looked upon. Finally, we'll be talking about the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Now, this International Day that is being held every year on this very day highlights a fundamental truth: no country can solve today's challenges alone. Dialogue, diplomacy and multilateral solutions provide the surest path to a peaceful and to a just world. With all the conflicts that we are seeing strengthening themselves in different parts of the world, I think diplomacy, multilateralism for peace is the need of the hour. This is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns the Indian minorities, the elections, and how human rights are being violated in India. We've been joined by Air Commodore retired Basit Raza Abbasi Saab in the studios to discuss more on that. Thank you very much, sir, to have joined us and to discuss this very important issue that has gained even more importance now that the elections in India have begun. Now, whether we talk of Ayodhya and how the Ram Mandir was, made, and of course on the same place after destroying a mosque in 1992, whether it be the whole COVID-19 and post-COVID-19 India that has not yet been properly, should I say the word, regulated or taken care of by Narendra Modi's India, that is concentrated on only one aspect, and that is to gain more and more power one way or the other. Whether it be the old parliament building, whose design features refer to India's syncretic history, whether it be Hindu, Buddhist, Muslim and Christian, has been replaced last year by a new structure that reduces India's past to a monochromatic Hindu one, where it be in India, the roads, the cities that have been renamed to severe connections for centuries of Muslim history to a manufactured Hindu one. Does it seem to offer the promise of a new India as much as it seems to sow the seeds of a downfall? Is Modi's temple of lies going to get the better of him?
I think your introduction covers most of the things that have been coming up now. But if we see that past tenures and the third which is now in the offing, we find that Narendra Modi is nothing but a master manipulator. He got out of Gujarat with the stigma of butcher of Gujarat, and he manipulated it into a medal of honor for his polity. So, and like that, every election, before every election, he has taking some steps which should sort of please the Hindu majority, who have been enamored by his constant drumming of Hindutva. And this is what the forefathers, the founding fathers, did not want to profess. People like Nehru and Gandhi never projected these things. But when he came on the scene, and with that background which I just told you, so he realized that this is the recipe of success. So, we do not have to be apologetic to the Muslims. We have to kill them and maim them and do whatever they want to do, and that would only add to the sort of benefit of the vote bank. And that is how what we see, that every election, sometimes it is the Pulwama attack, or it is the destruction of Babri Masjid and the sort of laying the foundation stone of that. And
then the Ram temple that
and
has
then
been constructed.
Now this election he actually inaugurated it. You know, this is just a sort of all very well timed maneuvers, and this is because they have realized that now the whole Hindu majority in that area is very well focused on to targeting the minorities in general and Muslims in particular, and this is working very well. But as far as success in elections is concerned, yes, it is a success, but
at what cost?
At what cost? It is actually fragmenting the nation. And those people, the founding fathers of India, were wise people. They may have had their own biases, but they realized that it is not in India's interest to leave this mantle of secularism, and they were very vocal about it. And to some extent, rather to a large extent, they also believed in it. But as the time progressed, and you know, when all these communities were living together, there was better understanding. But since partition, those differences and those biases and those
have been highlighted, but never as much as during this,
yes.
the two times
exactly.
rule of Narendra Modi. And now, I mean, if he comes a third time into power, I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that is because all these sentiments now got the state sponsorship, and so they multiplied.
Of course,
and you see
they
now
all these
exactly.
you know, sentiments are being empowered.
Exactly.
But you know, in all of this facade of a so-called democracy or pluralism lies a lot of issues that the Indian people are facing, like rampant inequality, lack of job prospects, abysmal public health, increasing ravages of climate change, and then, you know, the crackdowns on opposition political figures, manipulation of electoral rolls, voting machines, freezing of campaign funds from opposition parties. What happens to a normal layman in India who is confronted with all of these challenges, yet sees the current government only you know, focusing on one direction? What also happens to the opposition political parties?
I think the success of Mr. Modi, on the one hand, is his matter of luck also, and then continuously we see that he has constantly played this drumbeat of Hindutva, which sort of pleases the majority. And I think what your question exactly, if you just repeat, I was
just saying that what are the effects on the layman, what is the effect on the opposition parties?
Yes.
Because we are seeing the different maneuvering or machinations that the current government is doing for the layman that is facing different challenges, whether it be on the economic front, whether it be otherwise, whether it be due to climate change, or the opposition parties that are also being suppressed one way or the other.
Actually, what he has sort of been able to manage in these 2 tenures is that he has made it's the demise of all the state institutions. The judiciary has become subservient. The universities and academia is actually just dancing on the same tune. The journalist community, yes, some people are coaxed and some people are actually coerced. All those measures are there, but there are a majority of them, all these institutions, who are willingly following the what Mr. Modi wants them to do. So, this is a strange phenomena. There are very few people who are sort of listening to the sort of dictates of their conscience, and they are all very happy to follow the suit with Mr. Modi. And this is what we have seen. Look at the judgments coming out of the Supreme Courts. I mean, they are blatant sort of miscarriages of justices. Look at the journalist community. They are actually just barring a few, and many of them are Muslims, few are non-Muslim also. Like that lady, Analyst Rai. She is a luminary, and she knows that what Modi is doing is actually destroying Indian polity.
Now, you know, Basit Saab, also, whether it be the Indian films, whether it be the Indian television, whether it be the news media and the major news channels, whether it be the educational institutions where the whole curriculum is being changed in order to highlight the Hindutva policy of the BJP, and all the centuries of Muslim and other rules are being completely effaced, removed from the curriculum, so that no trace of their history or what they have done to the subcontinent is ever present now. Also in the private universities, the Narendra Modi government keeps a close eye on classes, panels, research that might be construed as criticizing the government or its idea of a Hindu state. Is the public being swayed by these changes? Is it being brainwashed? Will it have any result, concrete result in the benefit of the BJP government?
Actually, institutions, educational institutions are sort of institutions of nation building. So, if you are building a nation which is biased and which is not seeing the realities, which is afraid of its own history, you don't own it up, then actually you are doing a disservice to the nations. And this is nothing but a long drawn phobia which is actually settled in their psyche, that they are sort of afraid of Muslim names. Man, what a name of a street or of a city or of a town. How does it threaten you?
They are even afraid of that, they want no trace of the Muslim past of India to be found anywhere in the coming months or years.
Yeah, so this is actually the same philosophy which is playing in the Bollywood movies, that they want to create a reality which is not actually reality. It's something virtual and it looks like reality. Unfortunately, the Indian politicians have started living in that bubble. What they think this is real, but actually they are fooling themselves. But yes, their foolhardiness will not be apparent now, as it had not been apparent in the last 2 tenures. And as the predictions go, he is likely to win this third term also very, very well. So, all these sentiments and all these machinations keep succeeding, but their ultimate results in the long run will be damaging for India.
All right. Also, Abbasi Saab, are Muslims being reduced to alien intruders? I'll go in detail, but I'd like to highlight 3 important facts, 3 important laws that Narendra Modi has implemented in the last few years. 2019, he repeals the national autonomy enjoyed for decades by illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Later that year, he also delivers on a second promise by introducing a law that ostensibly opens a pathway to Indian citizenship for persecuted minorities from neighborhood countries. Then there's the inauguration of the Ram temple that happens, and it delivers on the third and most important electoral promise, that is the climax of battle to turn India into a Hindu nation. Will Narendra Modi, or has Narendra Modi succeeded in these attempts to give India the Hindu utopia that the Hindu majority in India has been promised, and one that is quote unquote surrounded by waterlogged streets, emaciated cattle, and a people impoverished in every way?
Actually, the success of Modi lies in the elite, and the business community, Ambanis and Adanis, they are the people who are flourishing, and along with them their employees and the team which is there. And the world is actually not bothered about the lot of the general Indians. They are looking at these financial and economic success, which is sort of very important for them. And it's very unfortunate that world conscience is actually in a sleep mode, and we see the situation in Gaza is in front of us, that even yesterday they passed the bill for about $26 billion for Israel. So this is the world of duplicity, hypocrisy and duality in which we are living.
All right.
That the human rights and what is right, it's only being given lip service, and actually people and the nations unfortunately are driven by only and only by their economic interest. And that is why he is able to sort of do all these things, and yet the world always looks others.
And that is so shameful of a world that calls itself champions of human rights. Speaking of human rights, and of the minorities in India, Narendra Modi last Sunday addresses voters in Rajasthan, calls Muslims infiltrators who would take India's wealth if his opponents gained power. He also addresses the women, saying my mothers and sisters, that the Congress opponents will take their gold and give it to the Muslims. What kind of mindset would pave the way for a person like Narendra Modi to state these very statements while addressing a public rally? The president of the Congress party calls Mr. Modi's remarks hate speech. Other party leaders say that talk of how common Hindus are made to fear Muslims while their wealth is being used to enrich others. None of the 430 candidates the BJP is fielding in the current election is Muslim. How important are these points in order to make Modi's agenda clear as day?
I think it's very obvious that their target, they are very intolerant of minorities. We have seen the Sikh who are actually murdered outside India. I mean, they went as far as Canada and Britain and USA and Pakistan to murder their opponents. So this is sort of arrogance and that feeling of euphoria, you may call it, or whatever it is, something which is unreal. And their biases are actually taking them into a very, very narrow channel of destruction. But the results, the obvious results for the time being are very successful, and the world and people are actually monitoring that and giving them vote again to come into power again. So this equation will continue, because if you see the position of opposition in India, it is very weak. There is hardly any significant, the leader of Congress, Rahul Gandhi, they put him in jail for 2 years.
And they have frozen all his accounts.
That's right. So this is the kind of clout or power or whatever you call influence they have over all the state institutions. And there is no real challenge to him from inside India.
That is so unfortunate for a country that boasts itself to be a democracy, that boasts itself to be a pluralistic country. And of course, during a visit to the White House in June, Narendra Modi says there is no question of discrimination in India. When he plays host to the Group of 20 summit in New Delhi 3 months back, he chooses the theme, the world is one family. And things like that, the reality of India is totally opposite to what is being portrayed by Narendra Modi and his government, and that also shows in a US State Department detailed report that has recently been released that talks about the serious human rights violations in India as well. But my last question, a very brief answer. What happens then? The elections are held, and most probably, as you are also saying, a lot of other analysts are also saying, BJP comes back into power. What happens then to human rights? What happens then to the minorities?
Actually, that drive to sort of marginalize the minorities will continue, because they have already been sort of stripped of their constitutional rights, as we have seen in Jammu and Kashmir. and as we have seen in the Bengal, the CA that which is actually affecting that area most. So, all these measures will continue and they will only increase in their intensity and ferocity. So, this is how it is going to be, and I mean if the question is that when there will be a change, it is not foreseeable at the moment, because unfortunately Mr. Modi is a lucky person also, because he fell into footsteps of Mr. Manmohan Singh, who actually brought those structural changes and he reaped the benefits. And secondly, the world environment change. America one day suddenly realized that their main enemy is China. So, they thought that the only bulwark against China would be India, because neighbor and in close proximity. So, they are ready to ignore everything, and so these guys, the BJP, has a free hand, and they will continue, because this has been so successful. So, not in the near future, but the ultimate result of these measures will be destructive, and that only time will show.
Well, let's see what time shows us, but I don't see a rosy picture being painted as far as India and its so-called democracy pluralism is concerned. Thank you so very much to have joined us, Air Commodore retired Basit Abbasi Saab. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, because you talk such a lot of sense. Let's come to our second story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns day 201 of the Israel-Palestine conflict. We've been joined by Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry Sahab. He's a former foreign secretary. Thank you very much, Chaudhry Sahab, to have joined us as you always do, and such an eminent the discussion that we always have during the course of any discussion that we have. Israeli forces have been carrying out, sir, airstrikes and shelling homes in Burej camp that is located in the center of Gaza, causing numerous civilian casualties. Fears are rising for tens of thousands of civilians in Beit Lahia in northern Gaza, as Israeli troops are attacking the city with extreme force and order the Palestinians to immediately flee. Also, they have announced pulling out of the city of Beit Hanun, but when they have left Beit Hanun, we see the destruction that has been caused in all of the buildings, education institutions. Jabalia, where 3 family members have been killed, 34,262 Palestinians killed so far, 77,200 plus injured, 79 people killed in the last 24 hours alone, 14,500 children have been killed, 9,500 women have been killed, 9,500 Palestinians are held in 19 prisons all across Israel. What are you foreseeing, Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry Sahab?
Well, I am afraid the Israeli government is not listening to the voice of the world at large, including its main ally, the United States, which wants it to stop its fire and bombings of the Gazans. You can now see the mass protests spreading way into the US and now engulfing most of the leading universities. Today's news is about the Columbia University and clashing with the police. So we have a serious situation at hand where the Netanyahu government is simply out of control in their pursuit of making a greater Israel. They are trying to kill, bomb, evict, eliminate all these Palestinians, and this is such a historic injustice, historic moments of genocide and crimes against humanity. I think Israeli government will never be forgiven by the world at large for what it is trying to do. I think it is still trying to make Palestinians, Gazans flee either towards Egypt or simply get killed. And that's a very, very, sad situation. Unfortunately, there's not much the world has been able to do, and Israel is still continuing to commit its atrocities.
Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry Sahab, you mentioned the protests that have been going on in the universities in the United States. Now, more than 130 people have been arrested overnight in the New York University campus. Then 133 people have also been arrested from Yale, Columbia and other campuses. Dozens of pro-Palestine protesters have been arrested at different other universities as well, and they have been charged. Anti-war protests are also going on in Harvard, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT as we know that, and the University of Michigan. Students in University of Boston and in the environs have also set up protest camps. There are also protests going on in other countries like Australia, where major universities are also witnessing such protests. The clash is reminiscent of the Vietnam War and how the people had come out and had protested. Are we going to see a recap of such protests going on in the days to come? And what kind of implication are these protests going to have on politics in the US and the regional situation?
You would remember that 5 US administrations refused to acknowledge the ground realities in Vietnam. And there are books written, and I can particularly remember one, The Road Not Taken. It was written by Max Boot about a CIA operative, Lansdale, and which they had cautioned long time ago, just around the time when the conflict had broken out and US had gotten involved, that this is not the road you need to take. But the US went ahead until the protests, the public protests in the US grew to an extent that America had to pull out. But it was such an ugly situation that the US had to face. I'm afraid the US is going to face a similar situation in Gaza. They just recently adopted about a bill sanctioning $14 billion for Israel. This is absolute negation of what's being felt on the ground by the people of the United States. And these protests will continue to grow until the US policymakers, the Pentagon, the CIA, the White House, all of them, they begin to see that what Israel is doing will be a big blot on the conscience of humanity. And therefore, they better not be a part of it. That moment hasn't yet come. But I think the pressure is growing on the US government, and it all depends on the US government, not on Israel. It is the US which has continued to sponsor Israeli war action, and if US pulls its hand, then Israeli government will not be able to sustain the kind of operations that it is continuing.
Also, Aizaz Chaudhry Sahab, a Norwegian Refugee Council boss Jan Egeland says everybody seems to be on a countdown to war across the largest displacement camp on earth, which is Rafah. There's a lot of speculation that the ground invasion on Rafah will be happening in the days to come. And Israel, as per the statements that we've also read recently, whether it be by Netanyahu or by the military elite, also point in the same direction. Will Israel's attack on Rafah, with hundreds of thousands of people there, not be catastrophic or another human tragedy?
Absolutely, absolutely, it will be catastrophic. I think the battle of nerves that Israel is playing on is perhaps to oblige or force Egypt to open the borders and absorb all these population. The idea being that Netanyahu wants a greater Israel, and he thinks the only way to eliminate the Hamas threat would be to just let these people get out of the Gaza Strip. And Egypt is not ready to do that, because Egypt, one, cannot absorb all these people, and second, Egypt feels that this is not the solution we were looking for. We need the Palestinians to stay inside Palestine. And therefore, it is a matter of nerves between Israel and Egypt, and the Palestinians on ground, the Gazans on ground in the Rafah area are paying the penalty for that.
Aizaz Chaudhry Sahab, as far as UNRWA is concerned, neither the US nor Israel are ready to acknowledge UNRWA as the mere agency that is providing aid to the Palestinians. But as far as the latest report that has come from a French foreign minister, former French foreign minister Catherine Colonna, it has found that Israel has yet to provide supporting evidence for the claims that the UNRWA officials have been involved in the October 7 incident. This said, now that we are seeing more and more countries resuming their aid, like Germany to UNRWA as well, will we see a proper resumption of the work that was previously being done by UNRWA in Palestine, or will we continue to see blocking of any aid work by UNRWA, by the US and by Israel?
Well, I see the West divided on this issue. The US has never been in favor of UNRWA, but they have been sort of letting it go, and they have allowed the funding for this peacekeeping mission. But the Europeans have always been supportive of the cause. Now, the humanitarian access which the US has consistently blocked, along with the Israelis, is the present state. Though I do see some weakening of the US position on it. I think the US is calling increasingly for humanitarian access to open, but not through UNRWA, but through bilateral channels and through other allies of the US to extend some assistance. But on UNRWA, I think US and Israel are simply not letting that go. And with them blocking all access, what is it that UNRWA can do? There is very limited that UNRWA can do when its own aid workers are being killed, when the bombs are falling right, left, and center. So UNRWA is unfortunately not able to do much unless or until bombing stops and the ceasefire is in effect.
Well, let's hope something in that of that nature happens. We all know that the Iranian president was here, Aizaz Chaudhry, for a 3-day official visit. There was a joint statement that was given by both the Pakistani and the Iranian sides, in which both countries have expressed their strong and unequivocal condemnation of the ongoing Israeli regime's aggression and atrocities against the Palestinian people and the inhumane blockade of Gaza that has resulted in widespread death and destruction, as well as displacement of millions of Palestinians. Are more countries, in your point of view, joining the fray to condemn Israel and its inhumane activities and ask for a ceasefire? Is there going to be any impact of statements such as these?
Well, the world has already spoken. If you recall the 25th March resolution in the UN Security Council was not vetoed by the US, which called for a ceasefire. And people have already spoken in the UN General Assembly as well. Now, the second part of your question, whether this will be implemented, well, I don't see that being implemented by Israel. Israel continues to violate all UN Security Council resolutions, including the latest one which called for the ceasefire. So, as I said, my own sense still remains that ultimately it depends on the United States, which is the main backer of the US effort, which is funding it, which is arming it, along with some others like Germany and others which have been supplying arms. Unless or until the public opinion in these countries rises to a point where Israel feels that it can no longer sustain its operations, I think ceasefire will not be in effect.
All right, Aizaz Chaudhry, let's talk facts and figures. This is day 201 of the conflict. As per a report, in the first 200 days, 380,000 housing units, 412 schools and universities, 556 mosques, 3 churches, 206 archaeological and heritage sites, 32 hospitals, 53 health centers, 126 ambulances have been destroyed. Then we see as far as hospitals are concerned, the Al Shifa and the Al Nasser hospital, where we have seen people who have been found killed and in a despicable state once the Israeli army left these hospitals. Will there be no end to these atrocities? You've talked about the United Nations resolution, but there's also an International Court of Justice's resolution that was also passed that prohibited Israel from to continue or to move with any atrocities that could be construed as war crimes or as genocide.
That's right. I think the world opinion is very, very clear. but Israel doesn't appear to be yet moved, although internal situation in Israel is also panicking. Schools were closed and many people have left Israel, particularly after the clash with Iran. Um, uh, it has now become very clear for Israelis that its military machine is no longer invincible, that there is a challenge to it, and Iran has come out as a country that established its own deterrence and its own capabilities to take on Israel. So I think the ultimately the situation will change once the pressure, the public opinion pressure grows on the Western countries to stop aiding Israel, or internally some kind of political change begins to happen to stem the hands of the far right government led by Netanyahu.
Thank you so very much, Aizaz Ahmad Chaudhry Saab, to have joined us and to have discussed different aspects of this conflict, this war, this genocide, this ethnic cleansing, this war against humanity, crimes against humanity. I mean, there are so many terms that we could label this current conflict with, but unfortunately, we don't see any concrete action being taken. Thank you very much, nevertheless, to have highlighted so many important aspects for our public. Let's come to our next story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns the talks that are going on global plastic treaty in Canada. These talks have begun since yesterday, and negotiators from 175 nations have begun these talks on a proposed treaty to reduce plastic pollution, which is found everywhere from mountaintops to oceans to seas to even breast milk and human blood. Now, chair of the negotiations, Luis Valdivesco, says that the world is counting on us to deliver a new treaty that will catalyze and guide the actions and international cooperation needed to deliver a future that is free of plastic pollution. Let's not fail, he said. Nations had in 2022 agreed to finalize a world first treaty by the end of 2024 with concrete measures to battle plastic pollution across the world. This meeting that is going on in Ottawa is considered to be crucial as it is the penultimate session before a final round of negotiations are to begin in South Korea later this year. Plastics have also created a reliance on disposable consumer culture, and of course it is being said that the world needs to acknowledge that we cannot choose between recycling, banning or innovation. We have to do all three. The goal is to achieve 60 to 70% of the elements that are endorsed by the delegates. Time is of course running out as well, because the way we are seeing plastic everywhere across the world and not much being done, and the impacts that it is having not only on climate change but also on human health, it is necessary and deemed needful that action be taken at the earliest. Annual plastic production has more than doubled in 20 years to 460 million tons, and this is on track to triple within the next 4 decades. The consensus is to reduce the plastic production by 2040 by 75%, and at the same time involve all the nations, whether they are oil producing nations or the plastics industry. We've been joined by Anna Rocha, Director Plastics Program, to discuss more on this. Anna, thank you very much to have joined us. Anna, everyone's attention is now on this global plastics treaty negotiations that are going on in Ottawa in Canada. Could you share some of the highlights from the last negotiations that were held in Kenya this past October?
So in Kenya, we actually got to have a revised zero draft. There is a very long document and difficult for negotiations. So the outcome was not the best that we could have. And we also didn't agree on intersessional work. So we enter now Canada with a lot of work to do to make the negotiation document better and to ensure that we actually have enough time to negotiate the treaty that is needed.
Anna, I'd like to also understand, given that a first draft of such a resolution is still pending, what are the key demands that are being asked for by the civil society across the world or also from the member countries regarding the negotiation procedures?
So we need to remember that we are not talking about plastic pollution. Plastic is pollution. So without addressing the full life cycle of plastics, without ensuring that production is reduced, there is no way that we can end plastic pollution as is demanded by the UNEP 514 resolution. So the key demand from civil society here is to actually have plastic reduction, production reduction as part of the treaty. And the second main demand is to have a financial mechanism that allows developing countries and eligible countries in general the resources that they need to actually implement the treaty once the treaty is agreed.
All right. I know also your organization, Plastics Program, is really working with the endeavor to reduce plastic production in the next coming years and, of course, adhere to this global plastics treaty negotiations. What are the main issues and advocacies that you and your organization and organizations such as yours are bringing to this session? And how were the differing political or economic interests addressed in the last negotiation? What can we expect from the fourth session?
So we need a global target for production reduction. It cannot be a nationally determined target. It needs to be a global target that is agreed under the treaty and that keeps everybody accountable. So everyone knows what the production reduction is. We are calling for a reduction of between 12% and 70% a year in plastic production. That's one of our main advocacy points. And as I mentioned, we need to ensure that every country that doesn't have the resources to actually implement the treaty once the treaty is approved, get the resources that they need. So eligible countries in the global south, mostly in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, need to have access to the money, the resources, and the technical needs so that they can implement the treaty in an effective way.
Now, Anna, there are organizations, countries that are, of course, working together in order to come to a treaty that could be further ratified in South Korea later this year. But how can people like myself, like so many others, who are quite proactive and who are extremely looking at the dangers of plastic pollution, how can we be part of the movement, or how can we call upon organizations such as yourselves or the government in order to make the changes sooner than later?
So we need to remember that countries don't arrive at the negotiations and decide on their positions when they are here. They are actually reflecting, or they should reflect, the demands from their people in their own country, their populations, their communities. So it's the national demands that need to be reflected here. So everyone in any country who actually knows and understands the problem of the climate crisis, who actually wants this problem to be solved, need to be making pressure at the national level in their own countries to basically push their countries to represent their demands when they are in the negotiations. Countries need to represent their people. And so if their people speak up, we have better chances.
All right, finally, Anna, when you look at the plastic production, it has more than doubled in 20 years to 460 million tons. It is on track to be tripled in the next 4 decades. What you all of your organizations and the governments are working on is to reduce the plastic production by 75% till 2040. A, will you be able to achieve it? B, how can you force or pressurize all the companies that are producing plastic to reduce it? Because the way these figures are being given to us, it doesn't seem as if the organizations are in any interest to reduce their plastic production.
Well, if I didn't believe it was possible, I probably wouldn't be here trying to influence the negotiations. The simple fact that we are negotiating a plastic treaty right now is already a major victory that a lot of people didn't think was possible a couple of years ago. And many countries a couple of years ago said there is going to be no way that we will allow a plastic treaty to be negotiated. And somehow that happened. We are here and we are negotiating. So is it possible? Yes, it is possible. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. So we need to work very hard to make sure that we can do this. The plastics treaty per se, it regulates countries. So the commitment is between countries and not industry. So we need to have strong enough provisions in the treaty that will keep countries into account, so then these countries can regulate their own industries. Will every single country in the world ratify the treaty? Probably not. Do we need all of them to ratify the treaty? Probably not as well. There are many other ways to ensure that things happen, including through trade mechanisms. So what we need to make sure at this point is that as many countries as possible go with the right ambition, agree to production reduction, agree to the financial mechanisms that are needed, and then others will follow.
All right. Thank you so very much, Rocha, Director, Plastics Program, to have joined us to highlight the effects of plastic pollution and how organizations such as yourselves, along with the governments, are working together in order to reduce plastic production by 2040 to 75%. Thank you very much to have joined us. Let's come to our last story very quickly. The International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace is being observed all across the world, including in Pakistan today. It highlights a fundamental truth. No country can solve today's challenges alone. It has to be a collective resolve. Dialogue, diplomacy and multilateral solutions provide the surest path to a peaceful and to a just world. Of course, these ideals also form the foundations of the United Nations Charter, but across the world we see conflicts, climate catastrophes, poverty and inequalities that create enormous obstacles to diplomacy and multilateral solutions. And that is where the role of United Nations and important countries that form part of UN come in. They need to be as one on highlighting this, on working together for a peaceful world. Let's hope, under the current situation where we see so many regional conflicts escalating, that such days could remind people of the role and the responsibility that they have. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories, segments that pertain to us, you in Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.